Hey everybody. Last week, as most of you know, I was up in the Laurel Highlands hiking trail doing another through hike up there, 70 miles, 4 days, my typical backpacking trip up there. And man, while that trip went really well, there were a lot of things I just felt like I messed up on, or just things that I could do better. Just kind of want to go over it in a video, maybe kind of help you guys out, kind of see my thought process when I get home from a trip, how critical I am of myself, especially for hiking, just something that I love to do, especially with leading up to another through hike this year. I need to kind of iron these issues out. So right off the bat, I chose to go the reverse way than what I usually would on this trip. I usually choose to do the lower mileage day first and then lead up to the higher mileage days. And the reason for this is, at least for me, my body needs that first day to realize that, hey, you got weight on your back, and man, we're gonna be moving all day long in the heat potentially, which was definitely a problem with me on this trip, which we'll get into in a second. Now, knowing that my dad was gonna be coming down with me, camping and then doing the last day with me, I wanted to make his day a lot easier because, as you know, if you've hiked the Laurel Highlands Trail, the Ohio Pile section is kind of rough, especially for someone that isn't used to that elevation gain and loss. So I didn't want to kind of throw him to the wolves right off the bat. I wanted him to do, the nice, easy elevation gain leading up from Johnstown instead of the Ohio Pile section. So right off the bat, I was already kind of wearing myself out right at the beginning with all the weight starting off in my backpack right at the start of the trip. So if I had to do it again, yes, I would absolutely recommend going the opposite direction. Plus, Ohio Pile is one of the most beautiful places on the trail. So get your views in at the end, right? The leaves had not developed on the trees yet. I had no shade the entire time I was there. And pretty much I had clear skies for the first 2 days. On top of that, it was in the high 70s, low 80s the entire time, except for, night, where it went down to probably the low 60s. Now that posed a problem with me right on the first day because I forgot a very important item: sunscreen. How could I possibly forget sunscreen? Well, honestly, I don't typically use sunscreen at all, ever, except maybe, when I'm on vacation at the beach or something. My skin isn't the type of skin that usually burns that often, but I got sunburnt on the first day, and by lunch, the second day, it was so bad that I had to use a makeshift arm covering with my buff, I was glad that I had that. But, from now on, I'm not just gonna take for granted that there's gonna be shade on the trail. Typically, when I hike the Laurel Highlands Trail, it's in May or the fall, and, I have some tree coverage. But on this trip, definitely want to bring some sunscreen on these earlier trips, absolutely. Since the beginning of my hiking career in 2013, 2014, whenever it was, you've seen me in all of my videos, most of them at least, having a buff on my head in some sort of capacity. Now recently I switched over to wearing it just as a headband instead of like a pirate's cap, and that's worked really well just to keep the sweat and stuff out of my eyes is why I use that. It also doubles down as, something to wipe my tent off during the day from condensation, or wipe my feet from a stream crossing. It does double duty. It's multi-purpose. But for whatever reason, this trip, with the humidity the way it was, with the sun the way it was shining on me, it was a little hot in my head, and I just felt a little overheated. So every time I got to a stream, I would kind of wet the buff and put it on my head. But it kind of made me think, maybe it's time to move away from the buff and perhaps get a sun hat. As goofy as I think those are, I'm going to be doing the PCT hike hopefully next year, and the first 700 miles of that trail is going to be in the desert. And a buff, I don't think is going to cut it, especially with my experience on the Laurel Highlands hiking trail. So the buff, that might be the end of the buff. I don't know. Now, one thing I tried to do differently on this trip that I was amazed worked was I tried to intake more water, something I always struggle with. I always just drink between 3 and 4 liters of water on any given hiking day. But this trip, I doubled it. I ended up drinking between 7 and 8 liters of water. And the way I did that was I forced myself to carry less water which seems counterintuitive, but I ended up what's called cameling up at any large stream I came across. And I knew I could do that on this trail because I'm very familiar with the water situation. I wouldn't ever recommend you only carrying a liter of water. You really have to be familiar and cognizant of how much water you are coming up on throughout the day to do this. Drinking at the streams just forced me to say, I'm not leaving here until I drink a liter of water, and that would fill my belly up and make me feel less hungry throughout the day. Another thing I thought I did really, really well was my caloric intake. On top of eating 3,000 calories per day, which was perfect for me, I actually got rid of most of my sugar throughout the day. Now, I've been guilty as charged. You guys have even told me that my diet sucks while I'm on the trail. I just kind of figured throughout the past couple years that, that's just what hikers that do long mileage eat. And that is just totally wrong. It's something that I got wrong. And I'm really happy that I just took the plunge and got rid of all that sugar. I maybe would have some sugar in my oatmeal packets in the morning. And then I had one Snickers bar that entire time. Snickers is my favorite candy bar of all time. And I used to have 2 a day on top of, if it was peach rings or gummy worms or just not good stuff for you when you're hiking. And I'm actually gonna make a food video on what exactly I am eating now to fulfill these caloric needs of mine, as I think they're gonna definitely help some of you all as well make the shift, make the transition. Another thing that I tried differently this trip was using the Flextail, the tiny pump. You guys remember this in a couple of videos ago. I gave this a completely honest shot. I used it every single night to blow up my sleeping pad and pillow and my dad's sleeping pad on the 3rd night when he came to see me. But unfortunately, though this is a great product, like I thought, it just took me out of my nature element, and I did not like using this. So no matter how much I like this product, I just can't bring myself to take this along with me on any backpacking trip because it's just too darn loud. It removes all nature sounds from your environment while it's on, and I don't want to do that to myself or anyone else while out backpacking. So not saying that it's a bad product, just saying that it's totally not my style. Speaking of new gear, the Topo Athletic TerraVenture 3s, I just did a review on that a couple weeks ago. Check it out if you haven't already. They're new shoes of mine this year, and they're replacing my Ultra Lone Peaks, and I absolutely love them. However, when I switched from Ultra to Topo Athletic footwear, I noticed that Ultra had left a few, I don't know if they're just blisters under my calluses or if they're maybe some cracked heel spots. But either way, what was happening was I was coming down uneven on these spots and they felt like a blister and I couldn't pop it. It was underneath of a callus. So what I did was kind of put my foot through a complete reset process. And the way I did it was I bought these little pads from Dr. Scholl's. And these are callus removers. And I didn't think that they would actually work for me because my calluses have been building up for years now and through hikes on them. But surprisingly, they did work. I did end up using 3 of these pads per callus. So I used like 2 boxes of these things, and they're like $4 or $5, $6, somewhere around there. I'll leave them in the video description if you're interested. And surprisingly, these did the job. They don't hurt anymore, and it's exactly what I needed. I'm just keeping my feet moisturized. These took about 2 weeks to actually go through, and in that time I didn't do any hiking because I needed to let my feet build back up a callus again. But they actually do work, and I'm really happy that I went through that whole process, even though it was a big giant pain in the butt. Now, one thing I really think that I can do better in is getting a more consistent sleep in my tent. In my hammock, I can sleep all night, dead to the world, wake up completely refreshed, not a problem. However, in my tent, I'm still waking up 4 to 5 times every night to toss and turn like a rotisserie chicken. And on a thru hike, that's just simply not gonna fly. I need that time to be consistent sleep so my muscles and my body can recover for the next day of hiking. That's just the way through hiking is. If you're not sleeping, you're not recovering. And if you're not recovering, there's no way that I'm gonna last through 2,600 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail. So with all that being said, I'm going back to some older videos where I reached out for help from you guys and taking the advice that you're recommending into consideration. And I'm going with the Nemo Tensor because I love the pad, but I'm going with a wide version of the pad. Now, I'm not a very wide person. I'm very petite. I'm 5'6", 145 pounds soaking wet. But I think that extra 6 inches is gonna help me with my legs not falling off the pad. And when I'm sleeping on my back, it's gonna help my arms actually stay on the pad, which are two things that drive me nuts right now. On top of that, I'm also looking at a Nemo Philo pillow. This Nemo Philo pillow, it's actually fun to say, is a blow-up backpacking pillow, but it has a 1-inch, I think, memory foam topping. What are we baking, a cake, I guess? It has a 1-inch memory foam topper on it, and it's supposed to be one of the most comfortable pillows out there. So I'm gonna give that a try in my bedroom, sleeping through maybe a week on the floor next to my wife. I'm sure she's gonna love that. But I need to figure this sleep stuff out before I spend any more money. And so then if I don't like it, I can, return it back via the return policy. So gonna do that, see how that goes. Now the last topic that I want to touch on is something I think that we hikers need to be reminded on a consistent basis. So here's your reminder because I forgot to do it. There was a fire closure toward the end of the trail near Johnstown, and it was just a couple miles, but it was a closure. It was a prescribed burn. I think it was scheduled for April 10th or something maybe, and I had hiked through on the 15th or the 16th, just a couple days later. Now, had I done this trail in the reverse order that I usually did, I perhaps would have not been able to get through the fire closure. And I don't know what I would have done. I would have been without a ride at that point, considering I got dropped off at, the one end and picked up at the other end. And, that would have been a big pain in the butt for my rides and me. So just a friendly reminder, make sure you research any trail closures before you do your trip. I've been slacking. I've just been kind of taking for granted that, hey, yeah, the trail's there. I'm just gonna go hike it. You know what I mean? I reserved my shelters, but I didn't look at the trail conditions. I just breezed right by them. I'm very familiar with the Laurel Highlands hiking trail. I've done it, 4 to maybe 6 times in the past, but this is something that you should always do. So this is just me reminding you to do your research. So with that saying, if you found any use in this video, thumbs up. Any dislikes in the video, thumbs down twice, and hit the subscribe button for more backpacking content. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the trail, everybody. Have a good day.